Hello, my name is Spencer Streichert. I am so excited to be here today. You may know me as a host on CKUA or an actor in such projects as Fargo. Maybe you've seen me tell jokes on stage, but today it's not about me. We're here to talk about Jackson Reed and the Silverbirds Live in 25, which is a brand new project from the Calgary-based band, and I'm so excited to be sitting here with you. This is Jackson Reed. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Spencer.
Yeah, thank you so much. First off, I want to get into right away off the bat. We were just talking about the fact that physical media is making a comeback, and the packaging for your CD actually looks so sick.
Yeah.
What was kind of the concept of making an actual physical CD, like having something physical that you could sell to people?
Yeah, well, our last EP on air, we also did a run of CDs for that as well, which are still available. And so I wanted to do another like physical release for this record as well, especially because, I think this is a very important album for us. And yeah, so just, found a manufacturer and put it all together. And it's also great because with this release, we're starting up a Bandcamp page.
Oh, amazing.
So that we can, like, of course, if you're in Calgary, it's easy to get our merch at our shows and that sort of thing. But, as we keep growing our reach outside of Calgary, it's good to have a place where we can sell that physical merch. So we will be starting up a Bandcamp page where you can get that. And I'll pull it up here, but we're also going to have this framed CD.
And signed. Which is awesome. Because, like, those limited edition things honestly do super well, too, because people are there's more urgency to get them, right?
For sure, yeah.
So now you mentioned, like, as you're getting more followers and listeners outside of Calgary, I mean, since the album has come, not even been out yet, but since you've released it and it's been at radio stations, you've been on Radio Free Brooklyn, Waterloo. What is kind of how does it feel to have your music go outside of the city? Because I know that that's a huge feeling to be like, oh, like, we have a following here in the city, and that's always great, but there's always that, like, little piece of you that, and I know from my own personal experience, there's that little piece of you that goes, but these people just know me, right?
Yeah.
But now it's showing and it's proving to you that you have reach and your art can be admired and loved by people outside of the city. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we've been doing really well on radio for really like the last almost 3 years now. Our last 2 releases have done very well on radio. I think it's just like, for me, it was kind of like, this is a way for us to, to expand our reach without going on tour, right? Like, it's, and the reception, outside of Calgary has been fantastic on radio. Like, and I think, our music is really written, to be commercial, to be radio friendly. That's always been my goal with our music. And so, I think it, it kind of shows that the formula seems to be working there.
Well, and you were talking about how it's written to be commercial and radio friendly, but at the same time, you're still able to find something that is uniquely you. Like, it feels very organic. And I know from seeing you live that there is just an honesty that you're bringing to the stage when you guys are performing. This is going to be a completely out of left field question, but where did the name Jackson Reed and the Silverbirds come from?
Well, it's not that interesting of a story, actually. I was, a lot of my favorite artists kind of had were sort of named like that, right? Like Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Prince and the Revolution, those sorts of things. And yeah, so like I wanted
Doug and the Slugs.
Sure, yeah. I wanted to do something like that. And so I was trying to think of like what would be a good name, and I wanted to do some sort of like, make it sound almost like a sports team, right, in a way. I thought like a bird is pretty cool, pretty rock and roll. So I just kind of like and the thing is, though, there's been a lot of like bird named bands over the years, so it was like kind of like okay, is that name taken? Yes, that name is taken. And I just went down the line until I got to Silverbirds, and I was like, that sounds pretty cool. And there wasn't like a big band that had that name, so
Right.
we took it.
Well, it's disappointing to know that there was so many bird names, because it could have been Jackson Reed and the Toucan Sams. Like,
Oh yeah,
like that would have been also a cool one. I wanted to mention, because obviously I'm interviewing you today, but you do a lot of interviewing of other folks with your podcast. Where did the idea for your podcast come from? Was it just an organic love of music, or was it like, hey, I kind of want to know what, like, because you were interviewing some really big artists. Where does that start?
Yeah, well, so the podcast, of course, is called Guess That Record. And I kind of came up with the idea for it in the summer of 2021. And it was, I didn't really think like it would amount to anything. Like, I don't think if you asked me then that like I would still be doing the podcast now and it would have like been as successful as it's been. I don't know if I would have believed that. But yeah, I mean, really my goal with it has been to just like, keep growing the brand basically, and to, just as another avenue for us to get our foot in the door. And that's why I've like really focused on getting like legendary big name people on the podcast. And, yeah, I mean, I never would have thought that like I would get to speak with some of the people that I've had on the show before like becoming famous myself, so that's the yeah, it's been really cool to put it together.
Well, and you're talking about some of the names. I mean, it's honestly like really impressive, because I know what it's like having a podcast in Calgary and starting a podcast from the ground up. There is almost a hesitancy, I think, a lot of times to reach out to people to begin with, because I know for myself, I've always been like, I feel like a little imposter syndrome. I'm like,
Yeah.
does this person really want to talk to me? Was there something that kind of helped you get over that feeling when you were starting to reach out to these bigger guests?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that is that's been sort of surprising is that like, I mean, as long as you do your research and figure out who the right people to get in touch with about it are, that like a lot of the times they're happy to set something up, right? Like they want press and they want coverage. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's bizarre. I mean, we've had like Andy Summers from the Police, and Dominic Miller, and we've had Chuck Berge from Billy Joel's band, and Neil Giraldo. Yeah, I mean, really, it's just like a lot of the time you're just sending emails and following up, and then when it works, it's amazing.
Well, I have a kind of a follow-up, but it's a bigger question. What do you think is it's two questions. What's the craziest story that you've heard on your podcast? And two, what's the best piece of advice that you've gotten from one of these artists on?
Yeah, well, I think probably the craziest thing that we've like been able to experience on the podcast would have been with Chuck Berge. So I first interviewed Chuck remotely, but and this was 2024 to kind of put it on the timeline. But yeah, so we interviewed him like February of 2024, but I was already planning to go see Billy Joel in Seattle that May, because Billy's one of my favorites and I had never seen him live before. So I was kind of like, oh, I want to go see Billy. And I told Chuck that. And I said, like, if we could maybe do another interview in Seattle, like if that would be possible, that would be amazing. And he was like, absolutely. So then it was just kind of like back and forth with Billy's people for a couple months to make sure it was okay. And they gave us approval for that. So then we met Chuck the day before the show in Seattle and did the interview in person, which was great. And then after the interview, we're still talking with him, and he's like, so after the show, the band and we will be, back at the hotel, and we'll, be hanging out after the show. You guys are welcome to come hang out. We were like, okay. I had Nathan, who's the drummer for Jackson Reed and the Silverbirds. I brought him with me to like help record the interview and to go to the concert as well. But yeah, so me and Nathan were kind of like, okay, yeah, sure. So we went to the concert, which was amazing. Just like such a great show. Billy still puts on a great show. And then, then we drive to the hotel, and it took a minute to get in because the security people were kind of like, hey, you don't have a room here, you can't come in. So we had to call Chuck. He comes over, gets us in, and then we sit down at the bar, and you look around, and it's like almost everyone in the band is just there hanging out.
That's crazy.
Which was, it was weird. We were like, what are we doing here? Like, this is wild. And and like just got to talk with a bunch of people from the band right after, they were on stage in front of, 40,000 people with Billy Joel. I mean, that was crazy. So
that's amazing. And so I guess to kind of dive into that for a second, because like I've had a couple of times where I've been in those rooms where you're like, wow, there's a lot of my heroes here, and I don't know how to find the words with this. What kind of, I mean, it's a big thing for somebody to be like, no, like you're welcome to be here. Please come join us.
Yeah.
How did you find like, breaking the ice in those conversations in the room then?
Well, I mean, the nice thing is that they were all really friendly to speak with. And Chuck, of course, was, telling them like how, we're musicians too. And, so they were like, there was genuine interest in them asking us like, what we do and everything like that. One good example, actually, we got to meet, Crystal Taliaferro, and she, plays percussion for Billy and backing vocals. She does a bunch of stuff with Billy. But I really wanted to meet Crystal because she, back in the 80s, she's been with Billy since the 80s, but her first big gig was with John Mellencamp.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, Crystal, we have something in common because we've both worked with Kenny Aronoff. So Kenny Aronoff was John Mellencamp's drummer back then. And I mean, he's one of the like best drummers ever. Like he's still one of the most in-demand guys in the business. And so anyways, I explained because Kenny recorded a song with us, Dangerous Lover. He was the drummer on that song.
Oh, wow.
And so, we were able to kind of hit it off with Crystal based on that. While I'm talking about Kenny, though, he actually is on Guess That Record. He was it released on the day we're recording this, but we had Kenny on the podcast, which was great to finally get him there. And anyways, so that was an example of like breaking the ice in that kind of situation where it was like, a little like, what are we doing here, but they were really friendly. And I think the fact that like, I think there was like a bit of a, like we're all musicians here sort of vibe, right?
Right.
Even though like, I mean, we also met Andy Sashan, who's the bass player for Billy. And when he was, or when he found out we were from Calgary, he was like, oh, I've spent a lot of time in Calgary because I used to play with Shania Twain. So it's kind of, I mean, of course, they all are like, they've all played. I mean, Chuck was with like Hall & Oates and Meatloaf and stuff like that. Like they all have these crazy resumes, but I mean, they're still musicians. So they were friendly in that regard.
Well, and it's funny too, because I think that something that I've noticed as I've gotten older in the arts is that there is almost a fraternal bond of whatever art you're doing. If it's musicians, if it's comedians, if it's actors, there's a fraternal bond because the job is still the same at any level. It's just the amount of money that you're getting as a headliner or a lead on the call sheet or whatever. That's the only thing really that changes.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of those artists, especially because it is so crazy the amount of luck that you do still need, even if you're insanely talented. And so I think that there's something of they recognize that.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really cool to see. So obviously those are all phenomenal guests to have on, but what if you had one piece of advice that you got from any of these guests, what would be the piece of advice that you really have like taken and like held on to?
Yeah, well, I was going to mention that. So, I alluded to it, but we did an episode with Neil Giraldo, who of course is Pat Benatar's guitarist and husband. And Neil is, he's been with Pat like from the very beginning. So he played on played on and produced all those hit songs from Pat. And then he also he was on Jesse's Girl by Rick Springfield.
Oh, wow.
He did Don't Fight It which was the duet with Kenny Loggins and Steve Perry. And then he and Pat got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame together. So very cool guy to speak with. And he was really friendly. The other cool thing about that interview was that was the first time we had a really big guest and they came to us first. It wasn't like I was trying to, because normally, you send an email and you're the one pursuing the guest, but it was the other way around this time. Neil's people came to me, which was weird. Anyways, so it was a great interview. And afterwards, and it ties into the record, but afterwards I got to, we chatted for a bit after we finished recording, and I mentioned to him this was right around the time when it was looking like we were going to get to open for Nazareth in Edmonton, which is where Live in 25 was recorded. And so he was really excited to hear that, and he said the big thing to remember when you're playing those big shows is to have fun, because if you start to think about oh my gosh, we're in front of a huge group of people, and if you let all that stuff get to you, that's when your performance suffers. So he was just go out there and don't really think about it. And so I mean, the good thing is we've been playing live for a very long time, so it wasn't we've kind of gotten that stage fright out of us, I would say. So it wasn't too daunting to go up in front of a crowd that big, but I definitely did remember what Neil said, to not let the circumstances affect the performance, basically. So yeah.
Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned that with not letting the circumstances affect the performance, and the size of the room. You really do have to just remain present and have fun. I think it's funny. I've done stand up at the Jube, and that's about the same size as River Cree. And one thing that I had been given in terms of advice, and it was something that I wouldn't have even thought about if I hadn't been told it beforehand, is with a venue like the Jube where it's 3 different balconies, you have to move your eyes up, and you might not think that you're looking at the right place, but you are looking at the right place. Obviously with the River Cree, it's a huge venue too. And so how do you kind of own that stage? Because as a comic, I can walk around the stage, I can go to different ends of it, and it's it's easy for me to connect with people, on both sides and all the way at the back, because I'm able to move around so much. Obviously, when you have a whole band on stage, it's a different scenario. So where do you find that you are able to really capitalize on that space and own it?
Well, I mean, the great thing about it is I feel like I have a very energetic style of performing. I like to jump around and move around and all that stuff. But of course, the tough thing is when you're in a smaller venue, the stages are much more cramped and you can't really do that as easily. So it was actually really nice to be on a stage like River Cree, where it is like pretty big, and you actually have room to sort of move around a bit more. And the main thing for me, like, what can I do to like stand out
Right.
compared to every other band that like is opening for a major artist. And the thing I did during our final number was I ran off the stage and into the crowd. So I went down into, and you'll see it in the concert film, but yeah, I run off the stage and I go down and I'm high-fiving everyone in the crowd there, and then come back up and finish the song. So yeah, I mean, I think like with music, there is still opportunity to like move around and connect with the audience. So yeah.
I think it's interesting, the idea of going into the crowd, because that to me is more terrifying than anything else. As somebody who's been doing stand up and theater for a long time, I could not imagine going into the crowd like. But with music, there is that freedom to do it, because it doesn't really feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it doesn't really feel like with live music there is a fourth wall. It feels like everything is happening right there, whereas it feels like there is that disconnect with other forms of live performance.
It could, yeah, that could be the case for sure. But I mean, I think like in a lot of those moments, I'm not even like, kind of going back to like what Neil Giraldo said, I'm not really thinking too much, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's sort of a blur, when things like that happen. Like, I don't think in real life I would, be that outgoing, but it's different when you're on stage and you gotta, you gotta entertain the people, so you definitely do things that you wouldn't normally do, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I can vouch for that. There are things that you do on stage that you wouldn't do as a person, because you do have that freedom of it being performance, you know? I guess my next question with that would be, do you find that you have a persona when you were performing? Or is it like, or what is the line between Jackson Reed off stage and Jackson Reed on stage? Where does that kind of meet?
Yeah, I definitely do think on stage Jackson is a little different than off stage. Like I find I'm a bit more reserved, outside of music. But I think like this is what I want to be doing. This is, what I want, to be doing for the rest of my life. And so I recognize that like you can't really be shy and quiet on stage. You've got to kind of be bigger than your usual self. So I think I definitely do have a bit more of an outgoing persona on stage. And yeah, I mean, it is still, I think it is still me, but at the same time, yeah, it is like definitely a bit more of a character that I'm putting on stage. I mean, I think that's kind of the case for a lot of musicians. Like, Bruce Springsteen is my favorite, and I've I've read a lot a lot about Bruce, and listening to him in interviews and stuff, and I think it's kind of similar for him. Like on stage he's like such a wild man, and off stage he's a bit more reserved and
A little bit of a recluse in a way. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think there is a bit of a difference between who you are on stage versus off stage, because it is, I mean, like, it is a bizarre phenomenon, right? It's not a normal thing to go up in front of a huge crowd of people, and like you kind of have to be a bit different in how you approach that situation compared to how you are off stage, so
Totally. And I think that there's a part of it too where, like, in our brains on a very subconscious level, the only time that really on a primal level that we would be in front of a bunch of people would be if we were leading them in some sort of way.
yeah.
And there is a interesting thing that, you're leading people to have a good time, which is such a wild thing to be taking on. And so you do have to kind of amplify yourself in a way. I know, like, obviously talking about Nazareth, it a huge concert and like a huge opportunity. And we mentioned it when I had you on CKUA on the Rise a couple of weeks ago. The, those opportunities don't come often for Canadian entertainers. It takes a lot of us taking it on ourselves to reach out, get those gigs lined up, make those opportunities happen. So when you're getting an opportunity like that, what made you decide, like, hey, I want to make this a live concert film, a live album? I want to take the most of this opportunity and really, you know, hold it not just near and dear to myself, but to be able to have other people live through this opportunity afterwards.
Yeah. Well, it was, yeah, I mean, like, first off, we'd been chasing a gig like this for years, and we'd had some close calls where it was like, oh, like someone said like, hey, we're looking into this, and then they disappeared. And, like it was a long time coming to finally get a show like this. And, I knew that we needed to get some sort of footage from this show. Because you've got, once you do something like this, you got to pass it around, right? Like you got to try and get the next one. But like it had also been quite a while since our last release, especially our last release of original material. And I just, like, the more I was thinking about it, I was like, we could play a whole bunch of new songs at this show and get it both filmed and recorded, and then we've got a new EP. And that saves us a whole lot of studio time and all the headaches that come with recording in the studio. Let's just go out and record it live. And it was also important to hit that point even harder, that like we got to play a big show like this and you didn't. That was
Yeah.
That was sort of that's the other reason for doing this. Mm-hmm.
And honestly, that's such a good way of doing it. Like a good attitude to have going into that, because I know from, like, look, I'm going to get personal for a second here, but something that I really appreciate about what you're doing is that you're not waiting for those opportunities to come to you. You're going out and you're creating them, and you're actively trying to get to that next level. And that's something I really respect, because it's something that I do as well. And it's been, it has its pros and cons. On one hand, you do get a lot of great opportunities that other people might not necessarily get. On the other hand, you get a lot of people that are like, why the hell did that guy get that opportunity and not me?
Yeah.
Do you find, like, how do you kind of balance that feedback if you're getting it? If you don't mind me asking, do you have negative feedback from other musicians, or like negative comments or whatever? Maybe it's just a comedian thing, because comedians are bitter as hell.
Right, yeah. We definitely have gotten feedback at times that, maybe wasn't positive. But I think a strength of mine is just like moving on quickly, and not dwelling on it too much. Like, yeah, there's been plenty of times where I've been told no, and that's, that, if you want to be in music, that is something you have to get over very fast, is you're going to get told no a lot. So yeah, that's just really how I do it, is just not think about it, right? Like, as soon as you have an answer, move on, and just keep on going.
Honestly, that's a great way of thinking about it. I mean, again, comedians do not think that way. We dwell on every no.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it is interesting, because I think that it's something that we're seeing a lot more of nowadays, as people taking control of their careers and, having the ability to create content and to make things themselves. Whereas even 20 years ago, you had to, have the money to do a studio album, and it needed to be like a certain, it needed to be put out on physical media. There was no digital. There was no way to get your name out there.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're living in an era where that is completely possible. And not only is it possible, it's really the only way to do it, is to put that onus on yourself. Now, you open for Nazareth, and that's a big gig, and I'm not trying to overshadow that, but you also open for Streichert, and I have to ask, that is, Action is, I think, one of the best Canadian written songs of all time. What was that experience like?
Yeah, well, so that was, I guess, last February 2025. at the Deerfoot Inn and Casino in Calgary, which is kind of like, it's a bit more like, it's not quite like the same size of like a River Cree, but it's bigger than, like a club
Right.
or that sort of thing. And that one came about again, just, me trying to just find any opportunity I can. Got in touch with Street Heart's people. They were cool with the idea. Then Deerfoot Inn was cool with the idea, so it was able to happen. And it was an interesting experience, because that was kind of like our first time opening for someone that is, like at a group that's had a successful career like that. Once again, like kind of another stepping stone towards that really big show, which was the Nazareth one. But yeah, no, Street Heart, they were all really nice guys. And it was kind of funny because that week I did an interview on my podcast with a guy named Jonathan Wolfson, and Jonathan is the manager for Daryl Hall, Howard Jones, and the Loverboy.
Wow.
And it was funny. I told him that we were going to be opening for Street Heart, and he immediately lit up when I told him that, because Street Heart's bassist is a guy named Ken Seneve, and he's in Loverboy as well. So he immediately was like, "Hey, you'll have to say hi to Ken." So
that's so cool.
Which I did. So yeah, that was it was a good show.
Okay, so I have a question that I want to ask from the start of that answer. Sorry. You mentioned like Street Art people were cool with it, and then the Deerfoot Inn and Casinos management was cool with it. With comedy, there's not really that need to get the venue's approval as well. It's always just the headliner or the producer of the show. What's that process like with music, where you have to kind of reach out, you have to get multiple yeses in that?
It's different. I think every like opportunity I've come across has been a little different. Of course, like, like when it comes to like the bigger shows, I think it's like if you're having like a headlining show at a smaller venue, it's more about like, get in with the venue yourself, and then, it gets set up from there. But when it comes to the bigger shows, I think it really just sort of depends on who your contact is, first and foremost. Sometimes it can be, the artist's team, and then they will say, "Hey, we want so-and-so to open for us." And then the venue, goes along with it from there. But other ways, it can be the other way around as well, where it's, you've got an in with the venue, and then they, check in with the band who you might be opening for, and then it, goes from there. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just, it depends on the show. Like everything is done a little differently depending on, who's playing. So yeah,
that makes sense. So then I wanted to ask, like, how, because I know with comedy, like if you're opening for a bigger comic, you hang out with that comic. Like it's such a big part of the comedy culture, is like openers need to be a good hang. They need to be somebody that, the headliner wants to hang out with. With music, do you get to hang out with the bands like that you're opening for, or is it different each case, or is it like they're very closed off?
I think it's a case by case scenario. I've definitely, like, not gonna name names or anything, but I've definitely heard stories over the years of how, like, there are certain like headlining bands where it's like they, there is no fraternizing with the opening act, right? Like,
right.
They are dirt. We will not speak to them. Yeah, I mean, in our experiences with the shows we've played, thankfully, both like Street Heart and Nazareth, they were, we didn't really hang with them, but like in the times we bumped into them, they were friendly and everything like that. And I mean, it was really cool with Nazareth, actually, because like we didn't really see much of them at all. But after we finished our set, the lead singer and I believe the guitar player came up and said like, "Hey, that was a really good set, guys. Nice job," and kind of chatted before they went up on stage. And then when they during their set, they said like, "Let's give another hand for Jack Serene and the Silverbirds." So
That's awesome.
yeah, no, I think it does sort of depend on which band you're opening for. I think like I mean I like to think that most artists that you open for are friendly, and if you run into each other, everyone's cordial and all that stuff. And, and then some cases they're probably like, hey, let's hang out and everything like that. But yeah, no, I think there definitely are groups out there that are, like they keep it all separate. Like, don't talk to us. Don't even look at us. Right. So, yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because that it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where everybody is kind of in the same, we're in the same club. It's just the numbers on the paychecks are different. That's kind of the only thing that separates it. Okay, going into Live in 25, I wanna do a track by track breakdown here.
Absolutely.
But what I want to do is I want to know because you have such an interesting concept with this EP where you have both studio recorded songs and live tracks. And as you mentioned earlier, most of your live tracks were not recorded yet, right? They were originals, and they were not, there was no studio session.
We had demos, because that's what I do. Like when I write a song, I want to, hear it, like I want to get those sounds I'm hearing in my head recorded so that we know, like once we start playing it live or whatever, we know what to play. So all of these songs I had done demos of, but this was like in a lot of cases, I think some of these songs we had been playing live a few times before this show. In the case of Warmth of July, that was the very first time we had ever played that song live.
Wow. That's first off, that is very, very like flat out just brave to do that at a big show like that, to play a song live for the first time. So I got to give you props to that.
Well, I think part of the reason was because I knew that, the EP was on the way, and it was like, yeah, this song, I definitely want to be on there. But yeah, no, I think, like I knew what we were going to play. We knew the parts. We knew, because I had done those demos, we knew, like how it was going to sound. And so it was just a matter of going out and playing them.
That's amazing. Okay, well, track by track here. So it's a 6-track EP. Opening track, Calm Before the Storm.
Yes.
All right, so where did the idea for the song come from, and how did you feel the process was with the execution on it? Like how to get there?
Yeah, so, well, Calm Before the Storm is an instrumental. It's only about 50 seconds or so, but I had I can't remember when I did it. I think it was like maybe in like September. I was one of my favorite artists of all time is the Beatles. And one thing I love about the Beatles is how they were all over the place. They did lots of different genres and styles.
I thought you were gonna say drugs, and I was like, yes.
Well, yeah, but and one thing that sticks out a lot in their music is they incorporate a lot of orchestral and classical stuff. And I was sort of like, I've never tried writing a piece in a classical style, and I was like, I'm gonna just see if I can do like a little, short classical style piece. So I just got to my keyboard and then I just started laying things out, and like in one session I pretty much had the whole like idea of it, and then I just refined it a bit from there. But I surprised myself. I mean, I didn't like, I mean, I don't have a ton of experience with like classical and orchestral. My sister plays flute in the Calgary Civic Symphony, so
cool.
I've listened to a lot of it, but like I've never really played it or tried writing anything in that style. And I was like, this sounds classical. So and then I knowing that the EP we were going to be putting together the EP, it was kind of like, this could be like a little introduction to the EP, and that's why it's called Calm Before the Storm, to kind of give it like a bit of a concept, right? Like it's we know like this big bombastic rock concert is coming, and that's kind of like it serves as sort of like like an anticipating, like the anticipation is building for what's about to come. So that's what Calm Before the Storm is.
Amazing. So second track, Did I Miss Out?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first live track on the album.
Yeah.
Where did the idea come from? What was the songwriting process like for this one?
Yeah, so this one, when did we start playing it? I think I wrote it sometime in 2024.
Because I saw you perform this one at the Rec Room.
That's correct. Yeah. I think we played everything but Warmth of July at that show.
Right.
Yeah, so Did I Miss Out? I wanted to do something like, in terms of the sound, I wanted to do something that almost kind of felt like, almost sort of like house music or dance music, but with, the rock and roll Jackson Reed kind of edge to it, basically. I mean, I think I try and write everything from like a pop perspective, of course, and I think, this track's no different in that regard. It's very, meant to be something that gets stuck in your head, so like that was sort of the sound I wanted to go for, and of course make it big, right? Like I think, it lends itself well to sounding big, but lyrically, I think it's I feel a lot of frustration at times about like kind of where I am in my career. Like, I do wish that I was further along than I am. And, every day that I, don't have a record deal, or I don't, have like more and more opportunities, I just feel that pressure even more. And so that's kind of like where the lyrics are coming from on that song. And I think like that's also sort of like, that's what makes it kind of an interesting contrast, because it's such an upbeat, like party tune, yet like it's this like song that like the lyrics are very like insecure, it's almost sort of like Dancing in the Dark in that regard, where it's like, it's this like up-tempo pop song, but it's like the lyrics are, a bit more hard-hitting than that. So yeah.
And then to contrast that, track number 3, They Can't Stop Us.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the concept and the process of building that song. Also, to follow up, Did I Miss Out with that track? What was kind of the idea behind putting those two back to back?
Just like, I mean, of course, those were the first 2 songs we played in the show, and I just wanted to come out guns blazing, right? And so I feel like those were kind of the 2, really exciting songs to start off with, basically. And yeah, They Can't Stop Us, that was one, again, I wrote and kind of had a demo for probably like May, June of this past year. And I wanted to do something a little, again, like this one's kind of, it's got the pop to it, but I wanted to kind of have something a bit more punk, and a bit more rowdy. And yeah, so that's kind of what was going on with that song there.
Well, and it's funny because when we were on the Rise, and I said to you, your sound is very much like if The Clash was yacht rock. And
right.
I think that's a great example of that right
Mm-hmm.
there, is that track. Now, number 4, a track we've been talking about because it was the one that you played live for the first time that night, Warmth of July.
Yeah.
Again, the process behind that, because I still can't believe, like, I would not have the balls to go up and do a song live for the first time in front of 2,000 people.
Yeah. It's well, Warmth of July, the weird thing is I actually I had the chorus for it probably like, I want to say like 2022 was when I had that, but I sat on it for a long time before I actually finished the rest of the song. I wanted to going back to Bruce Springsteen, one thing that I really like about Bruce is the fact that he can do these songs which are like very, very much set in New Jersey, but at the same time they're still relatable, and you can kind of picture your own location in those songs. And I had never written a song that was like a Calgary song before, and I was like, I want to try and do something like that. And, thinking about like, what is Calgary? What do people think of with Calgary? Well, the Stampede. And so, and then, I'm picturing like, almost like a John Hughes 80s movie in my head with like, kind of like, a couple falling in love at the fair, right? Like that was sort of what I was picturing. And, just kind of took that and then added all the Calgary references in there. Yeah, I think like, even though it is like, if you're from Calgary, you will understand the references behind, what's going on in that song. But I do think it's general enough that like, you don't have to be from Calgary to enjoy the song. Case in point, when we got that airplay on Radio Free Brooklyn, which was the first, they're the first station in the U.S. to play something off of this record. Warmth of July was the song. So that was kind of cool that like, we, this very Calgary song, getting airplay in New York City, that's pretty cool. It was also, I mean, that does also make it kind of ironic that the first time the song was ever played live was in Edmonton. So,
and then the first time it was played on the radio was in New York City.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, but hey, I mean, like the cool thing is it's like, it's like we're kind of bringing Calgary to a wider audience with this song. So yeah.
No, absolutely. Now, track number 5. Who is Maxine? I need to ask.
It it was there was no one in mind. It's a fictional story with this song. The main thing was like I tried a lot of different names with this song, but I just felt like that one fit the vibe perfectly with sort of what we were going for. And I feel like I'm not afraid to share my influences, right? I think and in the last year and a bit I've really delved a lot into the music of the Police and Sting, just because I mean I've did the podcast with Andy Summers, and then I had Dominic Miller on the show. And of course, Dominic, that was actually an in-person interview, which we did here in Calgary.
Oh, amazing.
Because he had a show here last year. So yeah, like, I mean, I have listened to a lot of that kind of music in the last year or so. And it was just like, like we've played a few Police songs at our shows. And the one thing I've noticed is that they definitely get people worked up. And it was like, let's see if we can kind of take that energy and do our own spin on it, basically. And that's what that track was all about.
That's amazing. Well, the last track on the record, which is, I think my personal favorite, Do You Feel the Way I Do? Because it's so catchy. It's so catchy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's one of those songs where, like, you get that earworm. It's stuck in your head. Where did what came first, like the chorus or the bridge with that?
Yeah, so I recorded this over the summer again. And so we got word from River Cree like earlier in the year, and then some plans changed, and that's why like we ended up with the Nazareth show later in the year. So we had this big gap where nothing was really going on, and I was getting worked up, waiting for the next opportunity. And I I was like, because we've been trying to incorporate more of a pop sound into our catalog, and just like to again show potential labels or whoever that like we can be commercial, we can make songs that can reach a very big audience like that. And so I just wanted to do another track to just hit that home even harder. And so it was just kind of like it came together really quick. Like once I sort of had the idea for the song, then it was just a matter of recording it. Now the interesting thing about it is that I did that one completely on my own. I didn't go into the studio or anything.
Really?
So I did all the programming and instruments and vocals and everything like that. And it was I sent it over to Kenton, who mixed and mastered this record, and I was like, if you don't think it's good enough, I'll, come into the studio and we can do it properly or whatever. But he was like, this sounds great. And I was like, okay, well, I guess it worked out fine. And yeah, and in terms of like the sound of it, it's really interesting because I feel like in the last few years, the like a lot of pop music that's at the top of the charts right now seems to have like an 80s sound to it. And
That all really
which-
started with Blinding Light. It
Yeah.
feels like that was like the thing that really shot that whole movement into the stratosphere.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, yeah, so there's a lot of stuff out right now that I think kind of fits, what we're trying to do. And so, it was just kind of like sort of following the lead of what's popular right now. And yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out as well. Like, again, to think that, I didn't expect that it was gonna like work recording it all by myself like that, but it did, and it's another track that I think has like a big sound to it. Even though it's a studio track, we still made it sound pretty booming, and it was kind of cool hearing it on CKUA because I have a radio with like my record player stereo set up, and so it was pretty cool to hear it on the big speakers like that. And it's like, wow, it turned out really good. So
No, it really did turn out good. The whole project is really impressive, and I've said it before, to do not just a live album but also a concert film as part of it is that's a massive task for anyone to undertake. So I have to say again, congratulations. It's a great project.
I do think it would be great to talk about the concert film as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because I do think this is a big part of the EP, a big sort of companion piece to the EP. But yeah, we were able to get the footage from the show. So River Cree's got 2 big video screens next to the stage. So we were able to get that footage of, like what you would have seen in the crowd that night. And, I didn't really want to necessarily just have the concert footage and leave it at that.
Right.
I thought there could be a way, we can make this a little more different, a little more artistic. And over the summer, I saw they did a re-release for Prince's Sign of the Times concert film. And that was interesting to see, not just because it was, like awesome, but it was like between songs, there were like these kind of like narrative sequences that sort of like, had, yeah, like that was what they sort of interluded between the songs. And once I sort of saw that, I was like, I bet we could do something with Live in 25 like that. And so then, we just started filming extra footage, to sort of stitch in throughout the entire concert. So it, I think it makes it a much more interesting watch. You're not just watching a band play on stage, you're getting that and, all this other stuff going on as well.
Well, and I guess that was a question I forgot to ask was because you have with a couple of the tracks, you have like not the concert footage, but for instance, with Do You Feel the Way That I Do, that one is...
That's a proper music video.
That's a proper music video.
Yeah, exactly.
So the idea comes from Prince there, but like how did you decide on like which tracks needed to be live and the concert footage film and which ones needed to be music video films?
Yeah, so like I knew because Did I Miss Out and the final song of the set, which was something we took from Bruce Springsteen, but it's the Detroit medley. Those 2 we just kept as concert footage because I felt like that was good to kind of establish, the live setting. But I wanted to kind of have an intro to the whole piece, and that's sort of like, it starts off with me just kind of like in a space, and I grab my guitar, and then, it kind of like, it's building up to, getting up on stage. And I sort of thought like, that's kind of like what it felt like in my head a bit. Like that's what I was going through. It was like, okay, this is a big deal we're about to do here. And then, you know, we also in that same sort of footage, we got extra footage of me singing and playing, you know, just to get some more close-ups of, you know, guitar and vocals and all that. But then for Warmth of July, of course, I knew that we were going to play that song whenever we had the chance to get to River Cree. So at this year's Stampede, I just walked around with my camera and filmed, you know, what was going on. And I think like that really turned out really well with the Stampede footage that I got in with Warmth of July. You know, just really kind of hits that vibe very much so. And then with Maxine, it was, you know, we had, I knew like I wanted it to be kind of mysterious and have kind of like a, you know, new wave sort of feel to that, or to the visuals with that song. And so I, you know, with Nathan, actually, we just went downtown Calgary one night and just kind of drove around and got footage on the streets there. And again, I think that one really, and of course we made it black and white to just, yeah, really get that new wave feel in there. And yeah, it all turned out really well. And of course, also with Little Red Corvette in the concert film, I just put the footage from our music video that we filmed for that in there as well.
Which, by the way, that music video is awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's a really cool music video.
Yeah, no, it was good we were able to get that car in there. So yeah, no, but yeah, I'm very happy with how that concert film turned together, because I think it kind of it paints you know, an even bigger picture of like who we are and what our sound is, rather than, you know, just posting the footage from the show and leaving it at that.
Totally.
So,
No, that completely makes sense. Okay, I do want to ask these rapid fire ones.
absolutely.
Okay, so it's gonna be a this or that sort of thing.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll say either 2 albums or 2 artists, and you'll say which one you think you prefer.
Sure.
All
yeah.
right. So, first one, Born to Run or Born in the USA?
Born in the USA.
I think that's the right answer.
I do love Born to Run though.
Tony Braxton or Cyndi Lauper?
I'll go Cindy.
Okay, fair enough. Prince or Jimi Hendrix?
Oh, that's hard. I don't know. Both. Like it's does it have to be this or that? I mean, yeah, it's tough because, you know, Jimmy, like that was I learned a lot when I was like trying to get better at guitar from listening to him, and Prince. You know, Prince has taught me everything I know about pop music. So, oh man, that's hard. That's really hard. You know, I think like Purple Rain is probably one of my favorite albums of all time. So I may give the nod to Prince, but I still love Jimmy. So don't take that the wrong way.
Honestly, that was probably the toughest one. 2 more this or that's. Roxy Music or Roxette?
Oh, definitely Roxy Music. I mean, we had Phil Manzanera on the podcast, so
that's fair.
Yeah, definitely Roxy.
And then the last one, Heart or Toronto?
I'll probably go Heart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any particular reason?
Well, I mean, I do like. It's interesting because I like a few of Heart's 80s tracks. The funny thing, both of those, I have a connection that actually involves both of those bands. But the very first podcast guest that I had, that was like, it was full on cold outreach. I reached out, you know, and at this point, like the show, I think I had done 1 episode at that point. Like this was episode number 2, was Jim Vallance.
Oh, wow.
Jim Vallance, for those who don't know, is a Canadian songwriter. He has worked with Bryan Adams for pretty much Bryan's whole career. He co-wrote, Summer of '69, Run to You, Heaven, a lot of Bryan's biggest hits. But then he's gone on and worked with a ton of other big name artists, Glass Tiger, Aerosmith, Alice Cooper. Like, he's written so many big songs. One of those big songs he wrote was it was What About Love, which he wrote for Toronto. And he gave that song to them. They did a demo of it, but then I can't remember what happened. They weren't able to record it. They weren't able to release it, but that demo was out and about. And then Heart's producer found it and was like, I think this would work well for you guys. So they did What About Love. It becomes a top 10 hit for Heart. Of course, for Jim, of course, he reaped the benefits from that, being the songwriter, but he did not write it for Heart. So it's, that's I guess my connection there.
Wow, that's so crazy. I love hearing those stories about, almost it's that close. Like,
Yeah.
imagine in an alternate universe where Toronto is the one to, actually release it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. Okay, well, I want to say thank you first off so much for letting me come in and interview you and talk about the new record. Is there so you're setting up a Bandcamp so people can actually get physical copies?
Correct.
It'll be on streaming services too, or
it is it comes out January 30th. It is going to be on all the streaming services, so Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you stream your music, you can get it. It will be, we're setting up the Bandcamp page. It will probably go live on the 30th as well. So if you want to really support us, then you can go buy that CD. It's great that, we can set that up, and then, anyone, anywhere in the world can get our merch, our physical merch. So that is a place where you can get it. And then we're on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and our username on all those platforms is @JacksonReedOfficial. So also it's important to follow us. So if you do all three of those things, we are in your debt.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Jackson. It's been a great time talking to you.
For sure. Thank you, Spencer. I appreciate it.